Welcome to this Asteroids tutorial. So in this part of the video, we'll start to get our player working. Before we do that, let's just set up a couple little things. One is, let's go to our main camera, and I'm going to back it out a little bit. So we're going to put that size to 15. You can change that up if you want. And then we'll also set the color here of the background to black. If you want to add some stars later on, feel free. So that's good. In the game as well, let's set that from free aspect to 16 by 10 so that we've got some consistency in our size. And then next, if you've downloaded our assets here, so we've got our fonts, our scenes, our settings, our sounds, and our sprites. In our sprites folder, you should find the player. And you can drag him in. I guess I'll just throw him in there. And there he is, okay? So if it's a little small, you can change the scale or play with the size of the camera, whatever you like. We'll go with this here. Now, obviously, he's going to move, and he's going to be colliding with things. So let's add those two components first, and 2D. And I'm going to find my rigid body, 2D, somewhere there. There we go. We're not going to use gravity here, so I'm going to turn that off. And we'll play with the linear damping and angular damping later on. We will add a collider. Now, he is a little bit of an odd shape. So I'm going to go back into Physics 2D, and I think what will work out well here is a polygon collider, because he's a bit more like a triangle. So if we put that on there, and then just sort of take a look, I think it will match up pretty well. Now we get this little bit here that's, but that's not going to make an issue, right? If that bullet or asteroid is going to hit, it's going to hit with no problem. So that pretty well sets up our player. Let us go and actually put a script on him so we can move him around. So I'm going to make sure I've got a scripts folder, keep things organized. And we will create a new script, and I'll just call that the player controller. So model behavior script. And we'll open that up. Now we'll use the new input system again here. And once we're back, let's start putting in our items here. Now I'm just going to, right at the top here, I'm just going to sort of work my way down. So it probably will automatically do this, but we want to make sure we're using the new input system, right? So put input system there. And we're going to use this slightly differently than we did in our other games. So we'll sort of see that in a few moments here. So in our public class player controller, give us some room up here. Another thing you can do is sort of organize stuff. So I'm going to put this in just so you see. You can put what's called a header, and this can help sort of organize sections. And so then you could say what this section is, and it's sort of going to be our movement settings. This is optional, but just something a little bit new there. Now, what I'm also going to do is do my serialized fields, because we can set these all as private, but I'd like to see them. I think it's sort of instructive, especially at the start, that we can see this one. So private float. We'll call this thrust speed, because we'll have this thruster that's going to be pushing it off. I'm going to set that to a starting value, and we can modify that as we go. I'm also going to do another float, so I'm just going to copy this, save a little time, and so private float, and this will be our rotation speed. And again, we could put a number in here. I made it higher, but again, we can play with those numbers to get the feeling right. Now, there's a couple other things that we want to do. One is having the rigid body. This one I think we can just hide because we will grab it. So I won't put a serialized field here. So rigid body, 2D. Let's just keep going here. A couple more. Let's put this as, we'll do a serialized field for this one. Okay, so now it's helping me out. And so this will be our vector 2, just to see our input direction. Sort of see that coming in. And then we'll also we might as well make this a serialized field. Basically, the thrusters will be either on or off. So we're just going to make this a Boolean. So I could say private there too. Let me put private in front of that as well, just to be clear. And then this guy will be a Boolean and is thrusting. Okay, so that's sort of what we need here. Basically, yeah, we've got sort of two things going on. One is we got to sort of have our input for our, which, turning left or right, and then being able to sort of move ourselves forward. The shooting we'll deal with a little bit different, and I'll show you that in a second. Okay, when we start, let's just get rid of this here, clean that up. And just bring this down a little, or bring it up a little bit there. Let's just get our access to our rigid body. So RB2D equals get component. There we go. Perfect. All right. Now what we're going to do is create a series of basically sort of the controls so that Unity can tell the ship what to do. And so we're going to use this input action. And so we're going to create the on thrust first. And so let's just get rid of this update. Clean this up. And so there's going to be 3 of these basically. So one of them is going to be the thrust, the other is going to be the rotate, and the third one will be the shoot. So we'll just sort of go through these. So the first one there, let's make this public void, and we'll call this on, sorry, this one's on thrust. And you'll be looking for the input action. So this is going to be a little bit different. Input action dot callback context, that one. And then you can just, it could be any name you want to give it here. Usually we just call it context, I should say. And then what we're going to be doing here is we're going to set this to be true. So the is thrusting is a Boolean, and we'll set that to true or false depending on sort of what happens to that button. So context, so that's the button coming in, and then we're just going to read that button. So read value as button, there it is. So it's going to work on, like I said, sort of an on or off. So it's going to set that to true if the button's on, and then off if the button's off. Okay, if you let go of the button. Now the next one there is similar idea, so public, and we'll do this one on rotate. Okay, and these names are going to be important when we sort of put in there. So we can go all with that, input, callback, blah, 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 context. So again, this one's a context, but that's fine. And then when we're down in here, let's just make that nicer. I know it's not moving in. Then we want to basically check to see is in that input direction, which we had up here. We only have to sort of rotate it around the sort of the x-axis. Is that right? I think so. I think we'll be okay. Context. Oops, sorry. Input action. Input direction dot x is equal to context dot read value, and it will read in the float. And this will be a number between sort of 1 and -1. All right. So I think we're good there. Good. And on rotate, why do we have? Oh, because I forgot the void. There we go. Okay, and let's close that one up too. That's why I wasn't very happy when I was doing this. And the last one that we're going to have to worry about is, again, a public and void. Don't forget that. And on fire. And same idea. Okay. And then basically what we're going to do, I don't think it's not happy anymore, but that's okay. Basically, if this is pressed, so if context.performed, then we're going to run the shoot function. Okay. Oops, not with the context in there, just like that. And we haven't made the shoot function yet, so that's going to give us an error. But basically, this is going to bring in all the values that we need. Now, these are obviously the values that are coming in. We have to apply them to our ship. So what we're going to do is make sure, give this a little bit of room here. We're going to do the fixed update here. So I think we should just be able to type that in. There we go. Puts everything in there. And so what we'll do is we'll do the rotation first. So RB2D dot rotation. So we're just, accessing the rigid body and going to rotate that. And it's just because it's going to work sort of backwards to what we've got. We could set the rotation speed to negative and this to plus, but it's just going to work backwards. So we've got a negative there. You can play around with it, but we're going to bring in that input direction dot x, and then we're going to times it by the rotation speed. And then just to make sure that it stays consistent, we'll multiply it by the time dot. And we probably should use, because we're a fixed one here, so it should be fixed delta time. There we go. All right, so that deals with the rotation. So we should be able to go in, well, not quite yet, we got to put the input controller, but we'll do that in a minute. That should get us to rotate. The other thing, of course, that we have to do is get it to move forward with the thrusting. And so let's just put a little bit more space in there and come down here. So if is thrusting, right? So it's a Boolean. We don't have like a degree of force. It's just, yes, the engine's on or not. And so what we'll just do is we'll add force, just like we've done before. And the direction will be the up direction of the transform dot up. And then, whoops, not yep. And then we'll times that by the thrust speed. Thrust speed. And yeah, I don't think we have to worry about the time dot delta time there because it's just adding in a force. It's not really over time. Okay, so that sort of gets that all set up. And then the last thing, well, yeah, let's just do this. We won't worry about the asteroid collisions yet. What we'll do is we'll just set up the very last thing, which is the shoot. Okay, so we'll get that going in there. Okay, private void and shoot. Okay, because we had that called within this function, and only the ship should be calling this. And oh, that's why it was upset with me, because I didn't close that one. Okay, so shoot. What we want to do is make sure that we've got a bullet. Now, I'm going to do this one a little bit different because we're going to pull it from an object pooler. Now, the idea here is that instead of always instantiating and destroying, we're going to actually sort of keep this bullet in a pool of bullets, and then we can just sort of activate, so set active to true and set active to false, when we need them. This is much more efficient than creating and destroying. Creating and destroying takes a lot of energy, a lot of compute power, I probably should say. And so by doing this, we're going to try to minimize the requirement for the processor to keep track of all these instantiations and also destroys. So what we'll do is there will be an instance of this. So this won't work for the moment. Sorry, dot. We're going to put a get bullet. So basically this is going to sort of activate the bullet, okay? And we'll just put a little bit of a thing on here just in case we run out of bullets. So if the bullet does not equal null, what we're going to try to do here is basically set the position, because we want to set the bullet to the ship's position. Transform.position is equal to the, I guess we could say this dot transform.position. Make it clear. Okay, so basically we're going to set the bullet's position to the ship's position, which makes sense. And then also we'll match up the rotation, because we want it, so transform.rotation is equal to this dot transform.rotation, perfect. We're going to activate the bullet, so dot set active, and we're going to set that not to false, but to true. And then finally, we want to sort of give it some velocity. Now, theoretically, we could just add a force, but here I think we'll just set the linear velocity. So bullet dot get component, it will have a rigid body because it's going to move. So we're going to get that rigid body 2D onto it. And then once we've got that, we can access the linear velocity. And what we're going to do is set that linear velocity to the same velocity or same direction as this. Now, so transform dot up, and then times. Now this might be let's create another little float here. Let's call it bullet speed, I guess, because we should be able to change that. So let me just come up here. Let's create it under, so we got thrust speed, rotation speed. That's movement settings. Let's just sort of put it under here. Well, let's put it into this one, because I think that's sort of, even though it's not quite movement, it is part of the bullet. So float, and then what did I call it there? I called it bullet speed or whatever, right? Bullet speed. So let's call that, make it a float. I'm sorry, make it a float, I did, and bullet speed. Okay, and we'll give that some number to start with too. All right, now everything's good here, except we don't have the object pooler, sorry. So what I'm going to do is just comment that out for the moment. And actually, let's just comment all this out, because yeah, that's not going to work now. It doesn't know what a bullet is. So we'll just sort of pull those things off, and then just sort of hold up on this. Take a little breather here, and we'll go and then start working on our input controller. All right, so we're back. Let's try to put that script onto our player, which should work out okay. There we are. And then the other thing we'll do while we're over here, let's also add that player input, right? And so we're going to create our little input guy. So I'm going to come back over here, and we have to create sort of for three things, I guess, right? The thrust, the rotate, and the fire. So let's sort of create that. So I'm going to create and right down at the bottom, the input actions, and maybe I'll call this player, because it's sort of the player input actions. I'll double click on that. And whoops, there we are. Well, this should come up here. Okay, So what we need to do is make sure, right, we name them the same. We've got on thrust, on rotate, and on fire. So we need to make sure that those are done. So let's create a new action map, I guess, here. And I'll just call this player controls. Okay. And our actions, so let's just create those 3 actions. So I guess we can change this one first. We'll call that thrust. Okay. Let's make a new action. We'll call this one rotate. And we'll add one more. And that will be our fire. So those, right, match up with the 3 that we created in our script. Then we just have to sort of be able to put things on these. So on this one, it is going to be a button, okay? And what we want to do is add a button here. So we have no bindings, so we're going to add a binding. And I'm going to use the W, so I'm going to use the A and D to rotate, the W to thrust, and then I'm going to use the spacebar to fire. But it's up to you. So I'm listening, so I'm going to put W, yes. And so I think that's what I want. So it's just an action type button, because basically it's just going to be an on or off. We don't have control over how much thrust, it's just the thrust. Okay, so the next one is the rotate, and that rotate one we want to do a little bit different because we've got sort of 2 values going to come in, right? Those sort of the W, A, and D keys. So I'm going to click on this. It is going to be a value, and then with the control here, we can change that to axis. Okay, and so this is again a little bit different, but when we come over here, we've got no binding, so we can add on that binding there. Sorry, I have to click on this, I believe. We're going to add a positive and negative binding, I think. Yep, because we've got the 1D axis. So let's pull that off. And then, so this is our 1D axis. And then we've got sort of a negative, because that's going to give us our -1 and our +1. And so the idea is that on the negative side, right to the left, I'm going to listen for the A key. And then I'm going to do the same thing and listen for the D key. And there we go. All right, so that should be good there. Okay, so we've got our 2 keys on the negative or the keyboard, and we're good. And the very last one is going to be that fire one. And again, just like the thrust, it's either on or off. So we can just sort of keep that as a button, so we don't have to change anything there. We're going to add, I guess we can really just go in here, the binding, and then we're going to set, again, listen, up to you, but I'm going to use that space bar. Okay. So that sets everything up. We'll save that there. All right, so that should be good. We will come over to the player, because down here, we're going to set that player input actions over onto here. And then that goes onto that. Now this one is going to be just a little bit different than we did before. So what we're using with that context and that input actions is these guys are just a slight difference in sort of the use here. And we're using, instead of messages, we're using what's called a Unity event. So basically an event occurs, things are listening for this, and when that happens, just like the on trigger, on collision enter, sort of those ideas, this will, the on thrust and the on rotate and on fire should work. Events, down here, we have to add the events. So that's what I forgot. So as you can see here, we've got the player input, and then we've got, so this here will add this. And so what we have to do, so player control, sorry, let me open that up a little bit. There's thrust, there's rotate, and there's fire. And so those are the ones that are in, that we created in our player input action asset. And so then what we have to do is just sort of say, okay, it's on the player. So drag the player in, and then we can find that function. So we go to our player controller, which is a script we created, and at the very top we can see, so on thrust should be there. So we're basically just matching it up. So same thing, we hit the plus here, we drag in our player, we set it to player controller, and this guy was the rotate, so is it on rotate? And last but not least, we're going to do the same thing with the fire. So I'm going to click the plus, drag the player in, say player controller, and then on fire. Okay, and so that should get this working. Let's hope we finally figure this out. And now we've got it rotating, and we've got it moving. And of course, the fire doesn't work yet, okay? But the idea is that we are moving our player around, okay? So that's pretty good. Now, there's a few little things, obviously. It doesn't rotate, or doesn't, wrap around the screen. So we fly off the screen, We can fix it up. That will probably be our next thing that we'll do. We'll just create a wrap script that we can put on anything from our bullets to our ship to our asteroids to make sure that they sort of don't disappear off the edge of the screen. Okay, so let's end that here, and we'll come back and we'll deal with the wrap and then also deal with the shooting. All right, welcome back. What we'll do here is get our screen wrap script working here. So I've actually gone in, I can delete that one, I was just working on something. Let's put in a screen wrap one into our folder here. And then once we've got that, we'll start coding it away here. So I'm gonna just add a script, we'll call that screen wrap. And as I mentioned before, this is gonna work on anything. So the shot, the ship, the asteroids, right? We can just sort of get this to work. So I'm gonna open this up. And we're going to create a few variables at the start. And these variables will sort of run through here. And they sort of make sense. We're going to create, let's just say here, private and the camera. And we'll just call it cam. Okay. The other thing, we want to get the renderer from the object. And I'll explain why in a minute. So let's just put renderer. And we'll call that, I guess, renderer with lowercase. And then we're also going to create four variables that will sort of get our edges, right? So we need the top, the bottom, the left, and the right edge. So basically, these are all going to be floats, and we're going to say left edge, and then I'm just going to copy all these, so 3 times. And so then we're going to have right edge, and top, and bottom. Okay. So these here would just be useful to know, and so we're going to try to keep that or sort of access these, define these inside our start here. So basically when the object is created, it's going to figure out who the camera is. So the easy thing, because the camera is almost like a singleton, we just say camera.main, right? That will grab the camera. Now the camera is very interesting. Well, actually we'll come back to that. Let's just do the renderer equals get component and renderer. Okay, so we've got those. And then the other thing is we're going to get the edges of the camera. Okay, so again, this is going to look pretty similar each one we go through, and we do have to be careful that we don't mess things up. Cam dot, and I'll just explain once we get to here. Viewport to world view. So viewport to world point. That's what I want. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a new vector 3 because we're wanting the edge here. And so this, so 0, 0, 0 dot x and semicolon. Is that going to get it there? Just a second. New vector 3. 0, 0, 0, which I have, world 2 point. Oops, my fault here. This actually goes on the inside. There we go. So basically what we're trying to do is just get the x value from here. Now the left edge, a little hard, I'll move my mouse around here a little bit. The bottom left corner of our screen is going to be considered 0, 0. So the left edge is going to be 0. So basically we're going to get the coordinates of that left edge of the screen, which is the equivalent of the sort of the world view of 0, okay? The top right is going to be sort of 1, 1. So basically the top is 1 and the right side is 1. And the left side is 0 and the bottom is 0, okay? So we go from 0, 0 in the bottom left to 1, 1 in the top right. So each of these, I'm just going to sort of copy these. And because each of these are going to be very, very similar. So the right edge, we'll just take that. And we're going to make this one 1 here. Because just like I said, that's the far right side, okay? The bottom edge, let's do that, is also going to be 0. But now we're not dealing with the x, we're dealing with the y. So we'll just set that. And then finally, the top edge is back to the y, but also 1 on here, right? So that's why, let's do that way. Good. So we've got the measurements, and it now knows the location of the left edge, right edge, bottom edge, and top edge. The thing is, this makes it great. We don't have to worry about like sort of individual pixels, like where's the left side or the right side, and it's just going to matter with the camera. It bases on what the camera is measuring, so it knows the edges, and then it can define those numbers there. Okay, now we have all those. We do have to put this into the update because we're going to be constantly checking to see, are we at the boundary? And if we are, we're going to move it. So first thing we'll do is we'll grab the position of the object, right? And this has to go into each object. So vector 3 position equals transform dot position. Okay, so now we know the position of the object. And then the other thing is we need to know sort of the size of the object. So we're going to do also vector 3 dot size, whoops, sorry, not dot size, vector3 size is equal to, and then so object, sorry, the renderer dot bounds dot size. So that will grab all our values. So again, we're going to have the x and the y, and basically we're going to be able to figure it out, okay, what we need to do. So let's just sort of take a look here. And again, there's going to be a lot of repeat, but you do have to be careful because they're just slightly different. So let's look at the first one, and then we'll sort of explain it here. So we've got if position x, okay, so minus size dot x divided by 2, and you might be wondering why we're doing this, but we'll come back to it, is greater than the right edge. Okay, so we've got that. Then what we'll do is we'll put position dot x is equal to left edge minus size dot x divided by 2. And I just have to sort of get this right. Do left edge. This, yeah, so we want to make sure that happens first before we do the subtraction. And I think we're good. Now, what there is the position is in the middle, right? But we need to worry sort of about, when the renderer sort of things, because once that sort of comes across, we don't want to sort of just sort of flash it in. So we want to make sure that we're sort of knowing where it gets to the edge and then sort of pulls it through. So what we're doing actually is if it's sort of greater than the right edge, so we've taken the position, but we've also removed it a little bit from that side, right? So we're going to get that to all come through, okay? So it's not right at the center, which would sort of make it look partially like it disappears. It will go right to the edge. So if it goes through and now it's all disappeared, then we're going to set that to the left edge minus, and again, it's sort of its size divided by 2. And that's just to make it, again, sort of seem a little bit seamless, okay? Seamless, right? It's going to make it look a little bit better. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to do this. And so let's just do this one first. So this is going to be the opposite. So we're going to do an else if. The S is, so this time we're going to the right. So we're going to wrap left, right. So we're going to check if we've got to sort of do the other thing. We've got to add that on because it's moving the other direction. And then we're going to put this is the left edge. So less than the left edge because we're going the other way. Then we're going to move them to the right edge. And we do have to add this on as well. Okay, oops, I got 2 T's in left edge. Okay, so hopefully I've done that right. And then we're basically going to do the same thing with the bottom and the top. And so I'm actually going to copy all this because it's going to be very similar. So we're going to do another if because we want to sort of do it individually. And so now we're going to go, so the y, and basically the y divided by 2, and then instead of this is greater than the top edge. Oops. Okay, so if we're going beyond the top, then we're going to set it to the bottom edge. And we have to do sort of the same little thing where we divide it, so subtract the half the size there, okay? And then we'll do the same thing. So if position dot y plus, so we're going to do the other way, is, this one, oh, that's just fine, the bottom edge. So it's below the bottom edge now. Now we're going to move it to the top edge. So make sure this is, whoops, I forgot there. That's a y2. Okay, just make sure this is the bottom. So we're going to move to the top edge. And yep, this should be y2. So make sure, basically, all of these things here should be y's, right? So these, the bottom 2 sections, these should all be y. And we've got top and bottom edge, and then we've got bottom and top edge, and then we've got the y. Whoops, and I almost missed that one. Y as well. Okay. With this, sorry, we've got to do one more thing there. Because we've set the position, we've actually got to transform it. So I'm just going to set transform dot position equals pos. So it's going to put it into that new position once we've calculated it. All right. Hopefully this works. It's quite a bit of code, but we'll see. So I'm going to save it and go back to Unity. And then the key thing is, of course, is making sure, which one is it? There we are, making sure that we place it on an object. And like I said, the script will go on everything. You can have 2 scripts on things, right? No problem. So I'm just going to make sure I add my screen wrap script to that. Hopefully there's no problems. It pops in. Don't know what that is. Okay, that's just the bullet speed because we haven't used that yet. No problems. Let's try play. And if we got this working, then we've got a screen wrap. Okay, so make sure I'm using the right keys. And so hopefully nothing weird happens. And it's pretty seamless there, right? So you can sort of see it will disappear and then reappear there. And what I would do here is just double check everything works okay. right? So that seems to work. I'd go back the other way just in case. Right, and then maybe go through this one. Just because if you've got, there's the 4 possibilities basically, and we just want to make sure that they all work. Yep, perfect. So that is going to work for every single object in our game basically. We can just add that screen wrap script and we're good to go. All right, we'll come back with the bullet. We'll get the bullet working. Okay, let's try to get the bullet working here. And so we've already got the shoot function kind of going in Visual Studio here, right? So if we go back to this, we go on to, so once we get the shoot to work, it does, yeah, we've got to turn this off. But what it's going to do is grab it from this object pooler and then sort of push it, right? So first things first, I guess, we should create a bullet object. And it's going to be pretty straightforward. So let us just sort of go back to Unity there and create this little guy. I don't have a graphic for it because I'm just going to use a square. So basically, all I want to do is instantiate or create here, I guess, a 2D object. I'm just going to make it a, sprites and then make it a square. Obviously, it's a little bit too big. What you think is good. I can't remember if I did 0.2, maybe 0.1. Okay. Now the other important thing, but you can change this up. Okay. The other important thing is that because it's moving, and we're gonna have to have a rigid body on it. Is it gonna work out this time? Rigid body. I guess I just wasn't putting RI last time, and so we're gonna change off gravity there. Probably, it probably doesn't matter there. And then we're gonna make sure that we add a box color. Okay. So those are on there, and so now we've got this object. So let's just call it bullet. And I'm going to make a prefabs folder because I'm going to drag this into my prefabs. Our asteroids are going to be prefabs as well, so it's a good idea to have a folder there. Whoops, why isn't it sounds? Just delete that while we're at it. Okay. Prefabs. Now it's in the sprites one. I don't understand what's going on. Anyways, let's just pull it out. There we go. So in there's our prefabs, and so I'm just going to drag my bullet into my prefabs. Okay, now, like I was mentioning, we want to have a object sort of pooler. And so the idea is that we don't destroy and create bullets. We just have a bunch of bullets that we can use as we want. So I'm actually going to pull, let's just delete this bullet since we've saved it as a prefab. I'm going to go into my scripts, and I'm going to create a folder here. And I'm going to call, sorry, not a script, I'm going to call it a script, and I'm going to call it my bullet pooler. Just because, like I said, it creates a pool of bullets that we can sort of draw from. Okay, now one thing we'll do to make life easier, we're going to make this an instance, because I think if you remember, we did sort of call the bullet puller, and I think I called it object puller, so I might have to go back and change that, but that's okay. So I'm going to create public static, right? We're going to make this a bullet puller instance, no problem. Now it needs to know who the bullet is. We can just make that public. Bullet prefab. Oops. What else do we need to know? We need to know the pool size. So how many bullets do we want to put in there? Okay, and we can preset it to say 20. That's fine. That's probably enough. And then so what we're going to do is also create a list of these game objects. So this is going to hold our bullets. This is what we call a pool. And so we're just going to create a new list of game objects. Okay, so we're going to have a bunch of game objects, a bunch of bullets that we can sort of draw from. Okay, so let us, why is that giving us a oh, the reason why, I don't know why using NT frameworks up there, but let's just do system.collection. I always want to put systems.collections.generic. And then that will solve our list problem there. Okay, we're going to do an awake, and that's just going to make sure this is an instance. And I'm just going to take a little bit of liberty here. Oh, wait, I could have just done that. And instance equals this. I'm just going to do that. Okay, I'm not going to put the protection in. We'll just sort of keep this a little bit straightforward. What we want to do is make sure that all our bullets, when we start, are set to false, right? Because we only want to turn them on when we actually fire it. So what I want to do here is for int I equals 0, so we'll sort of go along. I is less than the pool size, and I plus plus. So we're going to go through every single bullet, okay? And in each bullet there, like I said, the game object, oh, and this is at the start, sorry. So we want to make sure that we instantiate them all. So we'll just call it obj for the object here, and we want to instantiate, instantiate, there we go, the bullet prefab. we don't have to worry about its location, okay, because we're not actually going to put it in the game per se. We're going to set that object to set active to false so that it's hidden. And then we're going to add it to our list. Okay, so basically, we've got now it's going to run through. So in this case, we put this to 20. It's going to run through, create 20 bullets, set them all to false. So they're sort of sitting in your game, but hidden and, like turned off. And then make sure they're in our list there. Because what we're going to do is when we want to sort of create the bullet, we want to be able to, turn them on, right? And we'll be able to access them from the pool. So we don't need an update here. We're actually, it's going to return a game object. So it's actually going to return the bullet because we want that bullet to come out, and we'll call it get bullet. So it's actually going to grab the bullet. Okay. So what we want here is we're going to run through the list for each, I should say here. So this is a little bit different because we're running through, we've got a list. So for each, we can call game object, sure. Game object, bullet in the pool. So we're going to run through each one. Now, if the bullet is not active, okay, so if the not bullet, because we don't want to instantiate one that's already there, dot active in hierarchy. A little bit tricky there, but it's basically just saying, making sure that it's not already active. Then we're going to return that bullet. Okay, so returning means it's going to pull it out. So we've got access to that bullet. And if we happen to run into a situation where none of them are not active, we are going to just return null, just sort of as a little bit of a protection there. Okay, and that's it. Game, and why? Oh, this is why we had the problem. I always do that. Okay, there we go. Game object get bullet. Why is this saying that we're not happy? Not all paths return. Okay, so I think the trouble is, let's see if we've got that. So for each, return null. And then, so we got 1, 2. We seem to have an extra bracket here. Oh, I think this is the trouble. Nah. And let's just get rid of 1 here. There we go. Okay, so sorry, because we basically have, we're running through and making sure that we return a bullet. However, if there's nothing left in our pool, then we're going to return null. And so that's why it was giving us an error there, because that was not outside this loop, and there's potential that we wasn't going to return something. Okay, so this should be pretty good. I'm going to go back to this player controller, and I'm actually going to uncomment all these things, because now, and we have to make a little bit of a change here. Whoops. Let's go back, get rid of that. Okay, there we go. Okay, we don't have an object pooler, right? We called it the bullet pooler, just to get a bit more specific. So I'm just going to change that. Okay, now we shouldn't have any problems. So let's make sure everything's saved. We'll go back to Unity. And the bullet pooler is going to be an object, right? It's going to be an instance. So I'm going to create, just like we did with the game manager, create an empty. Let's make sure it's 0, 0 there. And we'll call this the bullet pooler. And we'll just drag our script onto it. Okay, so there it is. Now we seem to have an error. Let's just see what's happened here. Oh, did I miss a... I always have troubles talking and coding at the same time. Did I get rid of a... There we go. Okay, so now that we've got this, hopefully the bullet pooler will actually show some things here. There we go. So it needs to know who the bullet is. So let's just clear this away. Oh, and the other thing on the bullet prefab that I forgot to do was I should add the screen wrap to it. Okay. Now we do have to add another little thing to it, which is going to be the to get it to be destroyed. But we'll come back to that in a second. Okay. So now that we've put that on there, let's go back to our bullet pooler. Let's drag that prefab in, and I think 20 is a good number. Although at the moment, if we're going to continually create these bullets, we're going to run out. But we'll just see here. So let's make sure this is working. The bullet should fire. It should move. Now, I think it's going to move us a little bit. We'll talk about that in a minute there. But there we go. Yeah. Notice it's moving us a little bit to the left. And it's hitting us. We have to deal with the things. Now, there, I can't fire anymore. So all the bullets have become instantiated. We don't get an error, so that's good. And you can see they're sort of flying forever. But they're all wrapping, and everything's looking pretty good. Okay, so that's sort of all we really need to do for the bullet in terms of instantiation. But like I said, we do want to make sure that the bullet does deactivate after a certain period of time. So I'm going to create one more script here. And we'll add that, and I'll call it the bullet deactivator. deactivator. And there's different ways you could do this. Like I was thinking originally, oh, I'll put a collision, and once it hits that or leaves the sort of screen, it can die. But then that becomes a little bit of a problem because we want it to be able to wrap. So what I just did here, let's just change this to on enable. So basically when it gets enabled, right? So when it's turned on, so on enable, or on enable, sorry, that's all we need. Then, so when we basically set active to true, we're going to start a timer. And so start coroutine. Coroutine. Okay, and I haven't created this yet, so deactivate after time, and we're going to be able to pass in a time. So I put 2 seconds here. We can modify that, and so let's create this IE numerator. So IE numerator, and we'll call it deactivate after time. Make sure it's the same name. Good, and it's going to take in a float, and this will be the time. And don't worry about the red yet, because we just need the yield, return, new, wait 4 seconds. Oops, I should, okay, there we go. And we're going to pass in that time. And then basically, once that time's gone, we're going to set this game object set active to false. Okay, so what's going to happen is the object gets activated by basically the player, right? And so then when that's become enabled, we start the countdown timer, and basically we wait for, in this case, 2 seconds, and then it's set to false. And then so it's always in the pool. That's the key thing. It's always in the pool. So we'll be able to see this working. Let's save this and go back to Unity. And the only other thing is we have to make sure that this script also goes on the bullet prefab. So prefabs, bullet. Where's my bullet prefabs? There we are, bullet. And I'm going to add, what did I call it? Deactivate, bullet, deactivator. There we go. Okay, so this should be pretty good here. Let's play it. Now what I'm looking for is that after 2 seconds, this bullet disappears. So I fire, it wraps, and it does. Now what you can also see over here, all these bullets, and I've got to work out a way to make it less so we don't have all of them sitting here. Maybe put them into a folder or something. We'll work on that later on. That will put it into, you can see once I play, it becomes activated. So you can see all those become activated, but then it should sort of disappear, right? So as those 2 seconds go by. And the other thing is, if you spam, it looks like 20 is good because I'm having trouble getting, closer to getting all 20 activated, right? There's this whole thing. I could probably even just have 15 in there, but that should be good. Okay, so we've got the bullet firing and deactivating, so that's a pretty good thing. Really what we need to work on is our asteroids, so I think that's what we'll work on next time. All right, in this video, we're going to actually look at the asteroid. And the asteroid, of all the things, is probably the most complicated. Because if you think about, asteroids, that one asteroid gets hit by a bullet, and then it splits, and then, so then we create 2, and then those 2 asteroids split and create 4. So you do have a little bit more work to do here. It's not just simply a destroy. Now, what we want to do, though, is make sure we're not sort of creating extra sprites. Basically, we can have one base sprite, and from that base sprite, we can create sort of multiple variations on it by changing the sprite itself, but keeping the object the same, and then also changing the size so that, again, we don't have to create smaller ones, like unique ones. We can just change the actual size. So let's first bring this guy in. So just like before, we've got some sprites here, and it doesn't really matter which one, just bring one of them in. And so we've got an asteroid there, okay? There's variations, they're very similar, they're all about the same size. The size is a little bit too small, but for the max size, but we can play around with the numbers, and you'll see that once we start the script there. However, we can get a few things on here. Let's add a rigid body, 2D, and also get rid of gravity. And while we're at it, let's add on a collider. Now this one, you could go for a polygon collider, but it's so close to a box, I don't think anybody will notice the difference. And a box collider is a lot simpler than dealing with all those angles. So I'm just going to set a box collider on. Okay, so now we have our asteroid. That will end up being a prefab. We can wait on that for a minute because we're going to have to put on quite a bit of scripting to get this to work. So let's go find our scripts here, and let's create our asteroid script. So this one here. Now later on we'll create an asteroid spawner. Okay, why didn't that show up? Great. There we go. So I'm just going to call this the asteroid controller, I guess. All right, and so let's just open this up, and let's just start fresh here because we've got a few things to do. Okay, so some variables to start off with, and these, well, we can make these all serialized field. And so what we'll do, okay, so let's check this one. So first of all, we want to have a series of sprites. So we've got one to set with. We're going to go with a variety of them. So we're going to make that an array, and we'll call this lowercase sprites. Okay, that's good. Now sprites is not showing up because I should just call that sprite. There we go. Let us add a few more here. So I'm just going to copy all of these. I'm going to copy these a few times because we just got a few things to put in here. The actual ones, next ones are floats. So we're going to put a bunch of floats. I guess I could have copied that. Okay. Oh, and we don't want these arrays of floats, right? Okay. And so we got a few values here. So one of them is the size. Okay. And so this is what I was saying. We're going to control the size of the sprites here. And for the moment, I'll just set it sort of to 1. Okay. We're also going to create the min size. And we'll set that to 0.5. And again, we could modify these numbers, right, if we need to. And then we'll also set the max size. And we're going to make that 2. So basically, we've got sort of 3 sizes. We've got kind of the starting size. And then we've got a few other, the min and the max. So basically, we go 2, 1, half. That's kind of the idea here. And we'll also set an explosion speed because we want to be able to sort of, when we split from the big one, for example, into the 2 medium ones, we want to give it a bit of power. And so I'll put 100 there for the moment. Yeah, but we can modify that as we see fit. We're going to need 3 more. Let's just make these here. I mean, really, we don't never need to see the rigid body, so I'm going to just turn the serialized field off that. Not really necessary, but this is going to be our rigid body. And I'll use our usual RB2D, and we'll just get rid of that because we'll get that component in a second. We have to do the same thing with the sprite renderer. Now that one I do want to sort of see what's happening, so let's keep that on. Sprite renderer. Oops, if I can spell that right. Sprite. There we are. Okay, and then we'll just call it the lowercase sprite renderer. And the last one, this is going to have to do with the sort of I guess the asteroid is going to get instantiated outside of our camera boundary. So before we wrap it, we have to let it into our screen, and then we can wrap it. Okay, because like I said, it's going to be, you'll see there's going to be sort of a circle from which, I guess you can say almost like an asteroid belt, from which those asteroids are going to be created. So we do have to have this little thing that has sort of like a Boolean, so it has entered screen, we'll say. And for the moment, we'll say false, because whenever they come in or get created, they're going to be outside of our camera boundary. On awake, so let's just put this in. Pretty straightforward here. Of course, private void awake, and excuse me. So we'll get the references to the sprite renderer, right? Get component, pretty straightforward, and also the rigid body 2D. There, those are done. Okay, so now we've got access to those. Now on the start here, what we want to do is randomly change the sprite out, and then also sort of set an angle that it's going to be sort of fired at, okay? So just sort of the angle, and we'll sort of see here, and then we'll also set the size. So let's just do that. So we got to start, see if we can, there we go. Okay, so what we're going to do is sprite renderer. Okay, what's going on here? Okay. Get rid of all these. So sprite renderer is equal to, sprite renderer.sprite is going to be equal to, so we've got our sprites. Now if I did 0, that would always put it to the same, but I got to randomize that, right? So I'm going to do a random.range from 0, which would be that very first one, and then 2, because this is max inclusive, so it does include the final one, so we could say sprites.length. And so this will pick a number. So let's say we've got the 4 sprites, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that did say exclusive, right? Okay, good. Phew, I got a little worried there. So that number is 4, but we'll have 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, theoretically you can have more, but that will pick that one. The other one here, this one we'll sort of see a little bit longer. We want sort of different angles for this to get shot out at. So transform.Euler angles. And again, don't worry too much about this, but we are just going to create a new vector 3. And basically we want to randomize the z, because that will sort of send us up. So it's going to be a random value. That will choose a value between 0 and 1. And then because we've got that value, we can just multiply it by 360. And so that will give us an angle between 0 and 360. Okay, so then we can sort of shoot them off at random angles there. And then last, we'll set the size. Now, we haven't created this function yet, so this can give us an error, this dot size. And we'll talk about that after. Okay, lots of stuff going on here. So let's just sort of do. Okay, so we've got quite a bit, but that's sort of starting us off there. What we want to do is we will create the set size function next. And so what it's going to do is we'll make it public. And do we need to make it public? Well, we'll leave it public here. Set size, and we'll pass in that size sort of value. Okay, and so we'll set this to this dot size equals size. So whatever size we've got, we're going to set it. So this size, a little bit confusing, but we're going to set the size to this size. And so we're going to have to actually change the size of this. So transform dot local scale. So we're going to grab the scale, and we're going to say vector1 times the size. So basically, if it's going to make it 2 times, it's going to make it half time, right? That's what it will do there. And what we'll do as well, to make it a little bit more realistic, because obviously if you change the size, the mass should change too. So we'll set that to the size. So basically, the bigger one would have twice the mass of the medium one, and the smaller one would have half the mass of that. Good. So that sort of fixes that problem. Now, what else? We're going to create a variable called, or not a variable, a function called set trajectory. Okay, so void set trajectory. Okay, and it's going to pass in a direction. Okay, and so this is pretty straightforward here. So once we calculate the direction, which we will, we're just going to do this. So rb2d.add force, we've seen this before, and we're just going to push it in that direction times sort of that explosion speed. Where am I here? Oh, actually, just times the direction. That's good. We won't worry about the explosion speed yet. We'll get to that. Okay, lots going on. Next, we'll do an on-trigger enter. So this on-trigger enter 2D, and what we need to do is check to see if it's been hit by the bullet. Okay, now we could do a tag. We've done it kind of different ways. We used a tag. We've used a get component and check to see. There is, though, an improvement here, which I'm going to use right here. So collision.aimObject. So we're going to, whatever we've collided with, dot, we're going to try to get that component. Okay, and it's a little bit odd here. We want to get that to see what it's got on there. The script that will be on the bullet, we only have that bullet deactivator. So we want to make sure that bullet deactivator is on it. And if it is, we'll say out. And again, don't worry too much about this var bullet, because we're not really going to use it. We just need that there. But basically, we just make sure that it does have that component. So so if it does have that, right? Because that's what it's seeing here. Try to see if this does have the bullet activator on it. So if it does, then it's a bullet. So we're going to set this object. And I'm just sort of thinking here. Yeah, so good. We're okay at the moment. So just I started to doubt myself here for a second. Okay, so game object, we're going to set that to false. We are going to destroy it in a minute. For the asteroids, we're not going to try a pooling one because it gets a little complicated with different sizes and resetting. We probably could, but I'm just going to destroy this one. So we'll sort of compromise and have more efficiency for the bullets and less efficiency for the asteroids. Okay, so then what we want to do is we want to make sure that it's not at the minimum size. Because if it's at the minimum size, we're going to just destroy it, right? Well, we're going to destroy it anyways, but if it's not at a minimum size, we don't want to split it. That's kind of the big thing. So our next little check here is if this dot size is less than sort of the min, well, yeah, so I guess what we should do first is we're going to times it by the 0.5, because that's going to make it smaller. So I need to do that first. And then we're going to check to see if that is less than the min size. So this dot min size. Okay, and if it is, we're going to create split. And we haven't programmed this yet either, so we're going to have this there. And we're going to do 2 because the create split is actually just going to create 1 asteroid. And so we want to create 2. And so that's what that will do. once we've done the create split, so we sort of hit it, we check to see the size. If it's still above, excuse me, 0.5, we're going to create the split, and then we'll destroy that object, right? So we're going to destroy, and I'm going to create a function called destroy asteroid. We'll see that in a second here. Okay, so I think we're pretty good on that. Next, so we got to do a couple more things here, and I know this is quite a bit of stuff. We need to create the split. So let's just do this. I think private void create split, and so this is going to be creating our two asteroids, right? Well, one asteroid really, because we're going to do it twice. But this is going to create our asteroid here. So what we need to know is the position. So we can do vector2 position equals transform.position. So we need to know the position of this object. And that's why we can't destroy it first, right? If we try to destroy it here, we've completely lost, where it is. So we want to make sure that before we destroy it, we can sort of grab its position. And then, so what do we have to do? Then we're going to create this little circle. And we're going to do this as well with the instantiation. So what I'm going to do is the position is going to be plus equal. So this will push it out, almost like like a circle around it, right? So we got this in the center where the thing is, and then we create this little circle. And this is not a very big circle. So we say random, if I can spell, dot inside unit circle. So this creates a, like I said, a little circle here, inside unit circle. And then we're going to times that by, just to make it a little bit smaller, by, where am I here? By point, sorry, I'm trying to read this. Yes, times 0.5. Okay. There we go. Okay, so we've got that position now. So we've created this sort of potential of a circle here. And so somewhere on that circle, we've got it, and then so our asteroid, so we're going to create this object, asteroid, and I guess I should call this asteroid controller. Give me a second there. Yes, so half, we're going to instantiate. Just going to instantiate this asteroid, right? So this, oops, and we're going to put it at the position and the rotation. Rotation. Okay, so that should put our asteroids there. Now we haven't created the half, so this is creating the one that's half size. So we're going to make sure we set the size of this, half.set size, and we will pass in, so half.set size, this size, so whatever this size is at the moment, this dot size times 0.5 f. Okay, and circle. All right, so we've positioned it, we've created it, okay, and then we've set its size and positioned it and its rotation, and then basically what we want to do is shoot it off, okay? So this is going to be, so we call this the half dot set trajectory. Oops. Okay, and we're going to send that to, so from that random dot inside circle again. So before we sort of set its position, here we're actually sort of going to shoot it off at a certain direction. Just a second, dot normalize times explosion speed. Times explosion speed. There we go. Okay. So this will happen to two of them, and so you'll basically create two things that shoot those asteroids off. Okay, I think that's all I need there. Good. We need to destroy the asteroid. So let's just create that. That can be private void destroy asteroid. Very simple. I mean, I don't know if we really need a separate function for this, but we're just going to destroy, I guess, this .game object. That's a good thing. Okay, and a couple more things here. So on the update, we're actually going to run an update here. This is actually just going to check to see if we are on screen or not. And whoops. Spell update right. Okay. There we go. And so this one, if, and you'll sort of understand this a little bit more in a second here, has entered screen and, oops, and is on screen. Probably a little bit of an extra thing there, but that's okay. So we've got that, and then we have to create that is on screen in a second. So let's just see here. We want to make sure that it's on the screen. So screen point. So we're just basically trying to see if it's on the screen. Equals camera dot main world to screen, world to viewport viewpoint. Okay, so world view to port view, and then pass in its position. And so then we want to just make sure that it's within that. So we're going to return, and this will return true or false. Screen point dot x is greater than 0, and screen point, oops, dot x is less than 1, so we know it's in the screen. And I'm going to copy this here because this is all going to be the same except for the y. So basically we're just checking to see, is it within the screen? Okay, so we know that greater than 0 lifts it up from the bottom, less than 1 lifts it down, right? So we're just checking to see if it's within that range. Oops, and maybe I just need a semicolon there. There we go. Okay, so return, oh, sorry, this, because we're returning a true or false, this should be bool. Okay, and is on screen. So this is checking, sorry, what is it? Entered screen. I'm getting confused. Oh, you know what? I've messed up here a little bit. Sorry. So, okay, I got onto the next one. So let's finish this up here. Okay, private bool is on screen. Sorry, is, so let's just make on screen. Okay, and we're just going to copy and paste this text. Sorry there. So this thing, I just started to put this part in. Okay. Sorry, that goes there. That makes more sense. So we've created this, and now we just have to make this is on screen. And then we can check then is has entered screen is going to be set to true. There we go. Okay, and void update. What's wrong with my update? Do I have 2? Oh, because now I set that to bool. There we go. Okay. So there's lots of code there, okay? Now, like I said, this isn't going to do all that much because really we need things to be pushed, right? These aren't going to do anything, and we can see actually. Let's just get this working, and we might be able to get some. It's not going to move because really that's from the spawn point. That's going to create it to moving. Okay. Now what I'll do here is just in case you need to check anything. Let me get rid of that. You can just sort of look there. I'll bring it down in a second, so you can pause it if you need to. I'm going to go down to the start. Give you a second there. You can pause it, and then also down to the trigger create split, and then the very last little bit there, destroy, update, and is on screen. Okay, so let's save this and go in, and hopefully we can get part of this working. Give it a second to load up. So this will go on the asteroid itself, and then we'll make that a prefab. In theory, we should get the split, and I think from the split we should get it actually moving. So there's our asteroid. Let us put our asteroid controller on it. Now there's a few things that we need to do first. One is the sprites. So at the moment our list is empty. Like I said, we've got 4 of them. Let's throw them all on. So scene, scripts, sprites. Okay, so there they all are. And so I'm just going to drag, well, I mean, the order doesn't really matter because it's just going to randomly do one of those. There we go, 4. And it will put it in there. And okay, I think we're good just to test things out. I think I'm a little worried about it has entered screen, but I don't think that has anything, won't have anything effect. Okay, it's a little small. Oops, using the wrong controller there. I'm turning towards it. And if I shoot it, boom. Okay, now it did blow away. Ah, okay, yep. So one of the things is I did have it set to on trigger enter. So let's make sure we set that. Trigger, there we go. Try again. And again, we're just trying to see if it's going to split. And if it does, okay, now it did destroy. That's interesting. All right, so now we will do the asteroid spawner. And so a couple little things to keep in mind. It's going to take this asteroid prefab that we've made. So actually, let's make this a prefab first. Like I said, we might have to do a few little things to fix this up. Probably don't have to have point or the 0, 1 anymore because it is just, it's going to have all of those. So I'm just going to change that and drag it in. And I'm going to delete it from here too because we don't really need it here. All right, let's create our little, our function, our script. Scripts, come in here, and we'll probably call it asteroid spawner. Now this is what will actually, launch these things. So let's just, again, clean this up. And so what we want to do is we'll set all of these to serialized field, I think. Serialized field. And the first one here, we'll just do it, I guess, that doesn't really matter. Private asteroid controller and asteroid, we'll just call it. Okay, so we've got our access to our asteroid. Now here, let me just copy these, save a little bit of time, because we've got a few variables that we want to create. Okay, so this one here, we'll call it spawn distance, and this is going to be how far sort of from the center. This will sort of, the value, oops, this should be a float. This will vary depending on your camera. So for the moment, I'm just going to set it to 15, but of course we could always change that. The next there, the trajectory variance. So we've got to fire it, and you can play around with this number at the moment. So we could float trajectory variance, and we're basically going to plus or minus, and it's really the angle that's coming out of there. I think I bumped it up higher when I was messing around trying to get that right. The next one there is going to be an int, and then we can decide how many asteroids come per wave. So I'm going to do asteroids per wave. I'm going to set that to 2. So we'll have 2 asteroids come in, and then also another explosion force. So this one will be sort of the original explosion force to get this going. So we'll make that a float, explosion force, and we'll set that, again, the number here, I don't know, I've got 5, we've got that. And then the last thing I'm going to put in here, but we might, yeah, you might do this on the game manager. Well, I'll leave it here, right? I won't put it on there. The one thing I was thinking about was a current wave. So are we on wave 1, wave 2, wave 3? That would be probably something that you would want to include in your game manager. Okay, private void start. I don't know why that doesn't help me out there, but that's okay. All right, now the start here, I'm going to sort of, again, I would probably give the game manager controller over this, but I'm not going to give you the game manager. You're going to design your own game manager. So we're going to call that from here, public void start next wave. Okay. So what we want to be able to do is obviously instantiate the asteroid. Okay. So we're going to use a for loop because, yeah, exactly. We've got so many waves, right? So if we have 2 waves, we're going to instantiate, twice. If we've got 3 waves, or 3 per wave, right, we're going to run through this 3 times. So what we're going to do is just spawn the asteroid, and we have to do that to code. So this is going to give us some red here, but that's okay. And then, yeah, we'll do that. You could, again, go to the game manager and ask it to do different things or whatever the case is. This here, this asteroids per wave, we might set that to public, just so the game manager, but we can actually get that from there. So yeah, I'll leave that to you, okay? So let's actually get the spawn asteroid, because this is really the last little bit that we have to do here. And then I'm going to leave all the rest for you. So spawn asteroid. Okay, so this is going to be, we'll keep this private, because it's calling it here. Void spawn asteroid. Okay. And so again, we're going to use the idea of a unit circle. So vector 2 and spawn direction. So you'll see some similarities with the other one. Random dot inside unit circle. And so this guy here, we want to do, so circle dot normalized, and then we're going to take that and multiply it by that's true, sorry, the spawn distance. So exactly like it says there. That's a little bit more room. Once we've got that, so we know the direction, okay, then the spawn point, okay, so this is actually going to be where it is, so we'll make this vector 3, spawn point is equal to transform dot position. So our spawner is going to be centered, but then we're adding on sort of where it is in terms of this spawn direction, right? So that spawn distance puts it outside. So basically our circle is outside. So plus, we're going to cast this into a vector 3. I guess, well, we'll just leave it like that. Okay, spawn direction. We'll do it like that. Now it's not being very happy. Oh, and because I put the, whatchamacallits on the wrong way here, this is going to cast it into a vector 3. There we go. Get rid of this guy. Okay, next we want to sort of give the trajectory. So we're going to create a float called variance, and it's basically going to randomly select random.range, and we're going to go from the negative trajectory variance to the positive trajectory variance. Okay, so whatever that, we've got minus 15 to plus 15 kind of thing. Okay, now you might want to increase that, and then we also want to put the rotation, so it's a quaternion, and we'll call it rotation, and we'll set that to quaternion. And don't worry too much about this. This is just to get the angle right. Dot angle axis, and we'll do the variance, and then we want to push it forward, so towards the circle. So variance, just so we created there, and the direction is vector 3 dot forward. Okay, we're almost there, and then we got to set a couple little things on the asteroid, right? So we got to actually, oops. So this should be asteroid spawner, because that's what it is. Asteroid. Oh, not spawner. Sorry, asteroid controller. Asteroid. Okay, there we go. And so we are going to instantiate the asteroid prefab. Now, did I call that? I guess I should have called this asteroid prefab. I'm just going to make that little change, because really that's what it is. Asteroid prefab. Okay, and then we know where and with what rotation. So we have the spawn point, and we have the direction. So the rotation. Okay, and we're almost done. So then we're going to just set the size. So the asteroid dot size. Now I might have to go back. Yeah, so I think what we can do, actually, this is going to be better. So asteroid dot set size, and what we'll do is we'll set that size to be the max size. Now the only trouble is that is not available to us, which is a good example of when we've got sort of private and public. So set size, we want to be able to pass in the max size for what it's doing, because we want to make it that the largest. So I think I'm going to have to do a little bit of work here. Let's just go back to our asteroid controller. Let's set this to public, the size. Although let's set these both. Well, let's just set this one to public. Because then I think we can. There we go. So we'll just pass in that 2 times. I mean, we could type it in, but we just sort of want to make sure that it's right there. And then, okay, last little thing, we want to actually launch it. And so with the set trajectory, so asteroid dot set trajectory. And did we make that public or not? Okay, so we didn't make that public. So let's make that public. Oops, public, wrong side. There we go. And we're almost there. Asteroid spawner, so set trajectory. And we want that with the rotation times. Now, it just happens to work that we need to times it by the negative spawn direction. If it doesn't, you shoot it out the wrong way, times the explosion force. Okay, lots to do there. So again, let me just clean this up a little bit. We don't have, oh, there's one error. Oh, okay, we've lost a bracket at some point. There we go. Okay, so I'll just sort of run through this again so you can take a look. Clean this up as we go. And sorry, I should start wave. And then spawn asteroid. And that was it there. Okay, hoping that's everything. Let us go back and put in, a game object, an empty. This will be our asteroid spawner. And we'll set that to 0, 0, 0. And that's important because this, like I said, that circle is going to be created from that center. So bullet, where are we here? Asteroid spawner. And that's all we have to put in except for the prefab, right? So if we click on this, we can probably find asteroid. I thought we created that. Prefabs. Should be able to throw that in there. There we go. Okay, and so those numbers are there. Now when we hit play, let's see what happens. Okay, now they did create, and they are coming towards the center. Okay, now this is going to take a little bit of you sort of figuring out. Obviously, much too slow. So I'm going to pump that up maybe to 50. What I found too is the trajectory variance. If I put that up maybe to 60 degrees, okay, that should be okay. We might have to check the spawn distance as well. Oops, of course I was in play mode there. So let's just bump that to 60, and we'll make that 50. And what you'll find, first off, is they will come in a lot faster. Okay, so there they are. And now it was a little hard to see. Now they're not wrapping as well, so we just have to sort of fix that because we do have that condition on them. The other issue, I think, is I'm going to sort of pull this a little bit further out. We can't actually see the circle, but I have a feeling, now of course I'm in play mode again, I have a feeling that that was spawning within sort of our play area. So what I'm going to do is hit play, and then right away I'm going to pause it, and then we'll just take a little look here. So now we don't see any, which is fine, okay? So, but we do see them here, right? There's 2 asteroid clones, and if I zoom them out, they are beyond that, and that's what we want. Now, if it takes too long for them to come in, you could bring that down to 25 or whatever the number is, okay? So it's going to be a bit dependent on you, but what we can see now, okay, well, they sort of came through. Okay, that last little bit, though, is just trying to make sure that they do wrap. So all we need to do is throw the the screen wrap on it, right? So we didn't do that. So make sure you grab your prefab. Where's my prefab? There it is. And the asteroid. And then scroll down. And so we could just add the component. There it is right there, screen wrap. And so if we hit play now, again, there's some fine tuning that needs to go on, but we'd have those in. And so you can see those asteroids now are wrapping, okay? Now they're not colliding with each other, which is fine because they're using an is trigger. Oh yes, my shots are colliding with me. So all we need to do to make sure the asteroids are wrap is go back to the prefab and add our little wrapping guy. So I'm going to go prefab, asteroid, and we can throw that on. So I'm just going to actually add it on. I'll just look for screen wrap. There it is. Type it in, blah, blah, blah. We've got it. So that should fix that. The other thing, though, we noticed before is that the bullet was was causing the player to move. So I think we can just set that to is trigger, and then that will fix that problem too. So we can basically just use is triggers for all this because we don't really need collision physics. So there it goes. Okay. Now you'll notice excuse me, we do have a problem. Our asteroids are not doing what they should do. So let's try to figure this out. So what's happening is that it's just getting destroyed right away. And so I sort of did a little bit of work and looked to see what I had messed up on and found the error. And so that error there, pretty straightforward. In here, sort of before we create the split, I had this wrong, right? Because if the size, we need to say if it's bigger, not less than, right? So if the size is greater than, so it starts off at 2, so that would make it, sort of 0.5, right? So that would make it 1. And so we have to make sure, obviously, that it's greater than the min size, which is 0.5. And then I also included the equal to, because we do have the min size being 0.5. So that will give us the 2 things, and that will create the split there, okay? So that will work. We can just make sure we save that. And then we go back. And that will work. Now, mine are a little small to start with, but you can see there's one, and then they'll split up, okay? Now, it's not destroying the player. You can figure that out. That shouldn't be a problem. I'm just going to try making mine a little bit bigger to begin with. So if my asteroid, now that scale was 2 already. There is a way, and I might have to sort of look this up a little bit, just to sort of make those bigger to begin with, because we obviously don't want that. So we want to set this to be, let's just do that. So what I'll do is just set the prefabs size. So not the prefab, sorry, the actual guys here, and we'll set them all. And then there is the pixels per unit. Now that means if you want to make it bigger, you actually have to increase the number of pixels per unit. Right, just a second, because that will say, no, we want to do the opposite. So we want to make it bigger. So I'm going to just lower this down to say, let's try 100. And I don't want to spend too long, but that should make them bigger. So now those are all bigger for the scale of 1. So let's just see if they come in bigger. Yeah, I think they're a little bit bigger. Let's just always go big or go home. So those are much bigger. In fact, that's not too bad. I might even go bigger on my player because, that was relatively small. And I could just scale it here because we're not going to come in. We're going to change that size. So again, it depends what you feel. That might be a little bit too big. Maybe 1.5 would be better. But that would work. And hopefully, whoops. And now we've, oh, you know what's happened? Because I made that size bigger, the scale didn't change on the box collider. So let me just go back. Stop. Let's take a look at our prefab and our asteroid. And so if we sort of bring that up, sort of the scene there it is. So you can see the box collider is just too small. So because we've done that, we basically need to scale up our box collider so it looks a little bit bigger than 2, 2.5, 2.5. Oops. Pretty good. Okay, so that's where we're going to end it here because I just double check. We'll talk more in class, all the different things that we can do, things that we have to improve. Still looks like it went through. There we go. And you can see the size works out as well there. Good. All right, let's end this here, and you should have a pretty good working game of Asteroids with still lots for you to do.